Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room. And we welcome back to the program Alan Delay from the Comrades Marathon Association. Comrades has come and gone, and 2026 is well into its planning. Elaine, welcome to the program. Thanks as always for your time. Great event. Always issues here and there, but overall, I think much better than the previous year, and I'm sure you must be delighted.
Hi, Louis, and hello to all your listeners. Thanks for having me on the show again. Yes, we are delighted. Well, whilst we did have some challenges and areas of improvement, which is expected every year, the event was a success. And we're very pleased with how things have panned out by the end of everything taking place on the 8th of June. So, yeah, we're full steam ahead with planning again.
When you look back a year ago, yeah, about a year ago, I mean, it was a little bit of turmoil going on. How difficult was the year now when you reflect back?
Yeah, Louis, like I said on the previous occasion I was on your show, last year this time was a very difficult period for the CMA. I was also put in the hot seat to try and manage things from in terms of everything going on at Comrades House, etc. So very difficult 6 months, if you can call it, from straight after the 2024 Comrades Marathon until early December 2024. But when I reflect and look back, sometimes you need to go through some rough seas in life to basically come out on the other side and sail through peaceful waters again. So it's unfortunate that we had to go through such a difficult period last year, but I think when you're looking back and over the last from January till now, I think things have really steadied at Comrades House. Things are going very smoothly. We're getting along extremely well with all our various role players. The board is in an excellent, good space. Our race organizing committee and our staff are all in a very good space. So things are positive and looking good for the road ahead.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I'm not sure if you remember, but we were actually doing our interview, and little beknown to us, the changes taking place, and your position was changing on that very day. Pretty much within moments of us broadcasting this program, everything for you turned around and changed, and your position was basically secured as to the one that you have currently right now. The changes, obviously, that besides the Comrades Marathon Association changes, the structure of the race, the start of the race, and the end of the race. Let's start with the start of the race. Were you happy where it went with the changes and the split starting times? Did it work?
Yeah, Louis, it actually worked very well. So it was something to be expected that everyone was a bit nervous about. Runners were very anxious, even some of our own stakeholders, a little bit of anxiety around it because it's something new. But, in life, we have to try and embrace change and see how change can improve the race, especially because the main reason we did it was for safety of the runners. But it went extremely well. And look, I have to say, I think for me setting up, doing dry runs with the various role players, the firefighters, the volunteers, etc., in advance of this new two-start system that we implemented. Those dry runs and training sessions, etc., certainly went a long way to get us to that level of confidence by the time race day came. And, when we reflect back on 2023 with some of the safety issues we had with runners climbing fences, pushing fences over, shoving each other from within the seeding batches, we had zero issues at the start. In other words, there were no safety issues. We actually commended runners in our recent media release that we had put out a few days after the race, where we thanked the runners and we continue to appreciate the level of discipline that runners exercised at this year's down run start. It was fantastic to see. I was down there in the trenches, at the seeding batches, and also as we were moving the group 2 forward after group 1 had left the start area. Every single aspect went like clockwork, as far as, even the safety aspects and the new innovations that we implemented and new additional safety measures, in terms of additional security personnel, marshals, firefighters, fencing, widening the batches by use of crowd control fencing. All those various interventions worked like a charm.
When you look ahead, and I'm sure you have, will it be a little easier to do that kind of a start in Durban up to Maritzburg with the width of the road and the size of the ability, or the size of the facilities that you would have at a start, unlike Maritzburg?
Louis, I think certainly Durban, the upfront start is far easier to manage from a logistical point of view. It always has been, just as you mentioned, because of the wider road width and just better infrastructure outside the Durban City Hall. So certainly, if we did want to utilize a two-start system in future for upfront starts outside Durban City Hall, easily work extremely well, just like it did this year. Having said that, we still, looking at our planning, etc., in terms of finalizing our numbers, in terms of runner field for 2026 and 2027. And that, of course, will then have a direct bearing on whether we continue with the two-start system or not.
So that was just a once-off then, if I understand you correctly, for the down run for this year.
No, no, not necessarily, Louis. As I say, we're still busy with a lot of looking at the planning. We have to also
Okay.
take into account the actual data that we have this year by utilizing the two-start in terms of the timing stats, all the various stats that we have from timing mats at poly shorts, etc. So utilizing all the information we have at hand to make a final decision on that. So yeah, to answer your question, it's not to say it was a once-off. It may still be something that is considered for future.
So tell us, I mean, that's very interesting what you just said now with regards to accumulating data and accumulating stats. That must be a heck of a job.
Yeah, look, it is, but our timing service provider, Finish Time, does a phenomenal job in getting all the various data together. We work very, very closely with them in the months and weeks leading up to the race, in also indicating to them where we want additional timing infrastructure along the route, etc., so that we can make informed decisions post the race, which is exactly what we've done now with the 2025 Comrades Marathon, so that we have the actual physical data to show exactly how many runners per minute went through certain areas. And of course, that will guide us in terms of various aspects regarding the start and even the start time of the race, etc. It affects several different aspects of the race.
It's interesting. I mean, I just think to myself back 20 years ago, I mean, how did the organizers in those days do what you're doing now? Because they clearly didn't have the data that you have as accurate as it is, and yet there was similar numbers of runners.
Yeah, look, I still get amazed, especially at the Comrades Marathon, Louis, at some of the innovative ideas that the organizers of Comrades came up with back then, including the example you're making about trying to track runners or even just monitor timing, which a lot of it was very, very old school kind of methods, but it worked out for them, and it's fantastic to see how things have evolved with technology over time. A quick example I can give you when I was doing the route measurement this year with our course measurer for this year's Comrades is that 30, 40 years ago, for example, they would literally have someone with a wheel outside the window of a vehicle
Mm.
and traveling along the route. And after 10 Ks, that guy would stop. Someone else would then swap over the seat, continue, and there's someone outside the vehicle painting. So completely different to how we do it now in terms of the actual course measurement with the bicycle, etc. But yeah, it's amazing how things have evolved in terms of race organizing.
One thing that hasn't changed that much is the winning time for the men. I mean, the ladies, Gerdersteen has just completely shattered that myth of not being able to run under 6 hours if you're a woman. I mean, that's completely out the window. But the down run is proving to be in modern times, I call modern times, these last couple of years, unbelievably competitive between one and two.
Yeah, it certainly has. Especially when you start seeing, well, it has been for many years, but, when you're seeing athletes like Tete Dijana and Piet Vosman, it's unbelievable to watch and see how competitive the guys are when it comes to the down run. But it's extremely exciting for the event and for the viewers at home, etc., for our broadcast, and of course for road running in general. So it's really awesome to see how competitive, particularly the down run is.
Let's get to the end, the finish. It was new this time. Did it work?
So, Louis, we have taken quite a bit of criticism on that in the finish. The finish did work in terms of, what our intentions were etc., doing a street finish, which, as we've said many times, even before the race, that it is a dry run and we need to use lots of the ideas and innovations as a blueprint for the 100th running in 2027. Having said that, we were very quick out of the blocks to indicate to the running community and spectators that we acknowledge that there were some challenges, especially around congestion, which primarily was because of the high spectator volume at the runners' exit after runners finished the race. So that was the main issue that we had. But that's, it's actually quite an easy fix in terms of, just changing the layout at the finish when runners complete the race, giving them additional space to continue walking. And I've already come up with a solution similar to what you see at the Abbott World Marathon Majors, where you have dedicated meeting points based on the letter of a runner's surname, the first letter of their surname. And then their families and loved ones, etc., can go and meet them at those meeting points. But it then helps to alleviate pressure on the runner's exit area. Something else we are working on introducing is also for those runners that may have gone through the medical tent, etc., or for medical attention, that our system does a system-generated SMS and WhatsApp message that then goes to their next of kin to indicate exactly that they have been checked into the medical facility. Again, that will help also ease some of the congestion from a spectator point of view. And of course, there's some learnings in terms of maybe allocating or repositioning some of the facilities closer to after the finish area. But in general, the street finish worked very well. Our biggest challenge was in the last hour of the race. Other than that, the rest of the day, it worked actually very well.
Yeah, that is an issue, the last hour, and it's not new. I mean, what the percentage, I don't know off the top of my head, but the majority of the runners do finish in the last hour or hour and a half in terms of percentage-wise. You obviously can't change that. You can't make runners run faster.
Yeah, very true, Louis. And, for someone like myself that's been involved with the Comrades Marathon for many years, I've seen it every year, which, sometimes maybe people out there, the general public don't sometimes always understand it, but is that the vast majority of the Comrades field does finish in the last hour. And whether we've been at Kingsmead Cricket Stadium, Moses Mabhida Stadium, within finishing inside the Stadium Bowl, Scottsville Racecourse in Pietermaritzburg, or previously the Cricket Oval in Pietermaritzburg for the uprun, you will still have that congestion in the last hour. It's just the nature of the race and how runners finish Comrades in their last hour, which means that you also have a spike in terms of spectator numbers in that last hour. Literally, as soon as the final gun goes, like this year being 1800 hours at 6 p.m., within 5 to 10 minutes after that, the very same congestion and crowds almost dispersed immediately. And that happens every year. So you do have that super congested area for that hour. And then everyone starts leaving the venue, etc. By 7 p.m., the venue is basically left with officials and security personnel, etc.
It's interesting because if I go back to me just as a plain spectator, not broadcasting the race, they're kind of like 4 points for me. So point one is to watch the start. Point two is to watch the men's winner come through in the top 10. And then generally you would have waited before Gerdersteen came along, perhaps half an hour for the lady to come through. Now it's kind of like almost simultaneous within reason. And then the last part is whether you go out and have a braai or go catch a wave or whatever you might do, is to make sure you're back for that last hour, because the drama in that last hour surpasses the other 11 hours of the race. Do you get that feedback from a lot of people?
Yeah, we do get that feedback, and that, funny enough, hasn't changed, Louis. For someone that was a spectator at Comrades 30 years ago
Yeah.
to 2025, very, very similar to your own personal, preference in terms of following the race, etc. And the vast majority still do that. Something important for us, which we didn't want to repeat of from our last down run, also was not having what we call the ghost finish, because that's important it's a Comrades tradition, for people that have not made it to the finish line within the 12 hours to still be given that opportunity to be able to cross the finish line, albeit that they're not going to be allocated a medal. However, they still have been able to, they've effectively still completed their 89.98 kilometers as per this year, and were still given that opportunity to be able to cross the finish line. Some crawled over, some collapsed before the finish line and had to drag themselves over. But that's what everyone loves seeing, as you've mentioned, that last hour, that drama, that excitement, that seeing the pain, blood, sweat, and tears. That's what Comrades is about. It's part of the spirit of Comrades.
You're listening to the edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room. We'll have more for you after these.
Couples who've been together 25 years still don't always reach this place because it isn't about time. It's about intention. It's about choosing connection, even when it's inconvenient, even when ego wants to win, even when the silence feels safer than saying, I still choose you.
In episode 74 of Unique Yet Connected podcast, we explore what it really takes to reach the perfect relationship. Not perfect by society's lens, but perfect in presence, in truth, in choosing love on purpose. This one will stay with you, whether you are loving, leaving, or learning to love better.
Episode 74 is uploading on 29th June 2025 from 10 a.m. South African Standard Time on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and on our website www.uniqueyetconnected.com.
Because connection isn't a destination, it is a daily decision.
Remember to subscribe, share, like, and engage with us.
Hello everybody, I'm Louis Karpas. Join me on the next edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room as we look forward to another fantastic sporting weekend. There's Motor Grand Prix, there's Formula One motor racing, there is rugby test match action. The Barbarians are in Cape Town to play the Springboks. There's the World Club Football Championship, a weekend just before the start of the All England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club, Wimbledon 2025. All that and more on the next edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room. We spoke about data and collecting data and how difficult it was all those years ago. And then one of the other disadvantages, and I'm so anti this and I'll openly say it, social media. I mean, false reporting, false information that's being spread, rumors that are being spread. It must be difficult to deal with. And my question is, how do you deal with it?
To me, it's becoming more and more of a challenge. I must be honest. If I look back, sure, I mean, yes, Facebook, etc., has been around for a while. But if I look back when I personally first was at Comrades over 10 years ago, like 13 years ago, and yes, even myself, we were on social media at that point. But when you look at how much fake news and how much incorrect information is being punted these days, like in 2025, it's unbelievable. I mean, the fact before we could even put out our post-race media release the other day, we had to first put out a media release about fake news regarding two runners that had supposedly passed on. Complete lies and complete fake news. And that's scary, that social media, that's what can happen. But yeah, all we're trying to do is, and I'm pushing harder from my side, and I've got the support of the Comrades Board on it, is that something we have learned in the past that does not bode well for us, and we've seen it with other event organizers. Do not have ostrich syndrome and put your head in the sand and hope things are going to blow over. And secondly, come out immediately when you become aware of stuff on social media. Come out and either put the truth out there or put the facts out there so that you can educate the running community and the general public as to what the actual facts are. Sitting back and waiting and hoping it's going to blow over, actually in this current world we live in with social media, actually fuels it even more. So that's been our strategy, and I keep pushing hard on that to make sure we address things quickly and with facts.
In the real world, I say there are two things for certain, and that's death and taxes. In the sports world, there are two things for certain, and that is you're going to get a job and you're going to get fired from a job. As if you're a manager of a sporting team or if you're the superstar of a team, eventually your time is going to come to an end. It is so difficult because of the criticism that comes with the success. And generally it is overshadowed, the great success of a race like the Comrades and anything else, by that one or two, in this case, media stories that were false. And there were obviously one or two issues. So you're always on a hiding to nothing as the general manager of the Comrades Association. You clearly know before you go to bed the night before the race that a day or two or three after the race, there's going to be criticism fired at you. One of them was the issue with the runner that disappeared after the race, and thank goodness was found. The other one was brought up with regards to the elite athletes and their watering stations. What was the story there?
So yeah, do we just touching on the issue of Ms. Moira Harding that went missing? Yeah, that was a very unfortunate incident that took place. Especially since she had left the finish venue and the finish precinct, and also had not gone to our medical facility. So that would have certainly helped a great deal because we would have known exactly what her medical condition would have been at the time. Although we did manage to pick up information via CCTV footage, etc. Thank God that she was found, and we formed search parties, myself and various volunteers, officials, SAPS officials. We searched for her for most of the night after Comrades. We had a few hours sleep. I had to attend our breakfast prize giving while the next search party took over, and fortunately then she was located. And yeah, as I say, thank God she was found fine and, uninjured, etc. Just obviously not in a good medical condition as far as being out in the cold, etc. And of course, after having completed Comrades. But, we've kept in close contact with her husband and family almost every second day, speaking to them. And they've been keeping us up to date on her progress. But she's doing very well. And she's going to be completing her rehabilitation treatment later this week, but the worst is over, and we are so pleased that she's made a fantastic recovery.
Right.
And then, yeah, in terms of the elite stations, yeah, there was some logistical challenges. So it actually just boiled down to some slight miscommunication was some of our, various groups, etc., that work together, a mix of service providers, etc., where actual tables were delivered, because there were some reports that nothing was delivered. The tables were delivered on the route, just not placed in the actual locations of where the elite stations were marked out, with our spray painting marks that we've done with our route recce. And we've got the proof of that, our service providers, we've got the photos, etc. In fact, on the morning of the race, while I was now heading as on part of the route and then I headed onto the N3, making my way to Durban, I was also jumped into trying to assist to get our various teams and service providers to sort of rectify that on those first few tables. Because like I say, the tables themselves and the security officials that were going to be working at the elite stations were on the route, just not in the right location. So it was quite challenging to be able to try and get those trucks that had offloaded the tables to get back to the correct spots, if I can say, because the race was basically proceeding towards where those stations were. But look, by the time we got later in the day, with the very first few, like your leading men, were slightly affected by the first few tables. However, we were able to improvise, and it was rectified thereafter. So then the other almost 180 elites that still came thereafter were able to then make use of their bottles, etc. But also we did, for this year's race, also allow the various elite team managers to do their own seconding throughout the route. So it wasn't as if a lot of the athletes didn't get any form of nutrition, etc. They did still get their hydration. Fortunately, there was also that backup solution that we had agreed to from the various elite teams.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there was not a shortage of water sachets and potatoes and salty cracks. And I mean, I did it in my preview. It was a most fantastic story that we ran of what was actually on the race. Now, yes, there's been a touch of criticism, and there always will be. It doesn't matter whether it's the London Marathon, the Boston Marathon, or even the World Cup. But the success story comes out of the fact that you had 20,972 starters. Kudos to 18,194. 86.75% of them finished. When you look at the fact that a couple of hundred, maybe just a few more than that, had to go off for a medical treatment after the race, this was a massive success, really. And you guys need to be patted on the back. And I know self-praise is something that you don't give yourselves, but you deserve an absolute wonderful round of applause for what was a magnificent race in 2025, Alain.
Yeah, thank you, Louis. That actually means a lot. And fortunately, after the dust had settled, and I think it also goes a long way, like I say, in terms of the way we as CMA came out to acknowledge some of the challenges. But at the same time, we also need to share our successes and celebrate them with our running community, which is exactly the approach that we took. Because now, once the dust settled thereafter, and runners actually complimented us and, gave us a pat on the back as organizers to say, well done for this mature approach to saying and to work together with the running community to take their feedback as whether it's positive or negative, as constructive criticism. I even opened up the door in terms of providing an email address where runners can then submit their feedback, etc. to us. And I'm taking hours out of my day every single day since the race ended to respond to every single one of those and acknowledge the compliments, acknowledge the comments, some complaints, but it's really been positive in the main. And yeah, Louis, as you mentioned, in terms of when you look at even considering with all the new, like the two start, some changes with the cutoffs, other changes we made, the street finish, there were so many new things that were implemented this year, but the race was a success. And, we didn't have any sort of major safety issues. Fortunately, no runners had passed on, etc., other than, we had some medical cases, etc., which is to be expected every year at Comrades. But all in all, I mean, even the registration process, dealing with this amount of runners is very challenging for race organizers where try and sort of balance and get your logistics and your runner related items such as goodie bags, t-shirts, caps, race numbers. You try and get that like 100% spot on. And it's very easy for little challenges and niggles to happen here and there. But this year we got it spot on. There was not a single issue with medals, water sachets, t-shirts, caps, you name it. Everything that a runner wants to have and that they feel they've trained for and they've paid their entry fee for. Comrades this year did not run out of anything. The runner experience was amazing. The 47 refreshment stations were next level on the route. Yeah, so it really was a successful race at the end of the day.
In closing, I'd like to mention two things. Obviously, well done to the runners, well done to the winners, but two gentlemen of the running fraternity, Louis Massain, who completed 50 Comrades marathons, and Johannes Maros Moshela, who extended his own record as the 83 years young coming home. I mean, that is two of the most remarkable achievements of humankind. It's the ultimate human race, and that's humankind unmatched by anybody.
Yeah, Louis, I feel so blessed and fortunate that I can say I was at the helm of the Comrades Marathon when records like these were made and history made, I should say, because it was phenomenal. Louis shouted for me at the start. I hadn't even seen him at, once we had walked the Group 2 start, which his special batch, the K batch, was at the front of the Group 2 start. And once we had walked them up to the start line, he screamed my name and I ran up to him and we took a selfie together on his phone. And obviously throughout the day, we kept an eye on his tracking, etc. And when he crossed the finish line, he just about managed to shout my name again because he spotted me out the corner of his eye. And we grabbed another photo, and it was absolute goosebumps moment for me. And then he actually popped in at Comrades House on the Tuesday after the race. Personally come and see myself and the staff at Comrades House. Took photos with us. We updated his 5-0 finishes in our Comrades House Museum. We took some more photographs. It was absolutely phenomenal to be part of. I'll never forget that. I'll tell my great-grandchildren one day about being there while Louis Massain finished his 50th Comrades. And I mean, having these two gentlemen, I mean, to be still running at 83 years old also, these two gentlemen are extremely, extremely special. And it's something that we hope to see in future years, but I don't know if, as humans, if we still made as strong as these two gentlemen are. But yeah, really, really amazing achievement by both of them. We, again, from the CMA, massive congratulations to both these gentlemen. And we hope to see them at least next few editions of the Comrades Medal, particularly the 100th running, that they both finish their race in good time.
Alain, it's always a pleasure talking to you. And once again, congratulations. And I guess as the dust has settled, your marathon has begun for 2026.
Yes, it has, Louis. So 2026 uprun planning has commenced already. And another challenge we have, but an exciting one, is that we are planning 2 editions of the Comrades Marathon simultaneously, which doesn't usually happen at Comrades House or hasn't happened in previous years. But we are literally planning the 2027 100 running and next year's up run simultaneously. So it's going to be a very busy, challenging next almost 12 months for the up run and then proceeding to thereafter for 2027. But my team and I and the race organizing committee are up to the task. And, with the support from our CMA board and all our service providers and sponsors, I have no doubt that we're going to pull off these next 2 editions of Comrades in flying colors.
Alain Delay, always a pleasure chatting to you, Comrades Marathon General Manager. Well done again. Thank you so much for joining us on From the Boardroom to the Locker Room. That's tonight's edition. Hope you've enjoyed finding out all the bits and pieces that you most probably wouldn't have known unless you'd listened to the show, which is why Monday to Friday, you should tune in 6 to 6:30 Central African time to From the Boardroom to the Locker Room. We will be back tomorrow evening as we look ahead to another fantastic sporting weekend. The Springboks are in action against the Barbarians. I can tell you the weather in Cape Town is absolutely miserable. The team that wins the toss will most probably have to play with the tide and wear goggles and snorkels. Until tomorrow, be nice to each other and bye for now.